Yes, I'm here in Chicago, and our guest Iain is in Canada, British Columbia, I believe.
Yep, Western Canada.
Small town. What's the name of the town where you're at?
Place called Kelowna. So the region's got a population of around 250,000. We are directly north of Spokane in Washington. So that's the nearest baseline for you guys in the US. So yeah, Western Canada, out in the middle of the province of British Columbia.
And I've had the pleasure of meeting Iain in person and talking and learning about his background. And Carmen calls it the Vermont of Canada. So there's a lot of good skiing, I take it, up there. The question that we first ask everyone, how did you get where you're at in your asset management journey? Iain can do a 30-minute program on that. So I've asked him to just kind of fast forward, but include your start in Scotland.
Yeah, so I did an engineering degree, and towards the kind of like third and fourth year of my degree, I realized that I didn't want to be an engineer. I wasn't super into the details and the a lot of the kind of mechanics of some of the things that we were going on, and business was really a big interest for me. So when I graduated, I actually went to work for a management consulting firm, a business consulting company in Europe, and got trained up in Lean and Six Sigma process optimization. So really focused around the operations and business processes of an organization. Did a lot of work with some kind of supply chain and factory kind of clients, got into some local government cities in the UK as well. But one of my biggest relationships out there was with Scottish Water, one of the big water companies. So looking at the way they operate and run water treatment plants, and looking for efficiencies around their energy and chemicals and processing costs. So really kind of started to get my head into the infrastructure world and the kind of all the nuts and bolts behind the scenes of go on, but really from a business side of things. So did that for a few years, and then decided I want to come and see what North America was all about. Initially in my head, I was like, oh, I'll just come out for a couple of years and then maybe head back to Europe. That was well over 10 years ago now, and I'm still out here loving the North American life. When I made that transition out, I actually didn't have a job kind of lined up. And when I was on my way out the door at Scottish Water, one of the clients said to me, oh, when you get to Canada, go and meet this guy for lunch. He turned out to be Gareth Lifton, who is the head of the CH2M Hill asset management team in Canada. And he was very interested in taking on somebody that had that kind of consulting understanding, that could go and run workshops and understand business processes. And basically, I learned the asset management stuff from there on when I first came to Canada. And it was an interesting transition because the business process side of Lean was very useful because, you're looking at the way we are, running an organization, a business process around kind of what input comes in and what input comes out. And a lot of what we're doing in asset management are just different processes around the organization, often focused around, the way we make capital decisions and how we decide on infrastructure. But there was so many kind of tools from Lean that have been really useful for me over the years. So yeah, jumped into the CH2M team. That was when I first came over back in 2011. Yeah, it was a cool time with CH2M, who then became Jacobs. So we were kind of going around North America, helping organizations with their asset management journeys. Everything from kind of upfront gap assessments and roadmaps into level of service frameworks and investment plans. And something that was really interesting for me was that we worked with organizations in different sectors. So yes, we did a lot of public sector, municipal, local government stuff, but we also did work with airports and electric utilities. And this is something that, as I've been getting more into ISO 55000, has been super useful and interesting because, the principles are all the same. The mechanics and the machine and what we're trying to do is the same. It just gets applied a little bit differently when you're talking about specific asset classes. But that's been a really interesting in that, like, we're all dealing with very, very similar challenges. We talk about different assets and different services, but so many of the challenges and so many of the solutions are common between different infrastructure owners. So yeah, the consulting life at Jacobs, really enjoyed that, really enjoyed helping communities and organizations around North America with their journeys. But something that I started to kind of realize as we were going through this was, there's a massive gap in training and competency building opportunities that are out there for people that get into the industry. Everyone kind of falls into asset management from a pretty random path.
That's why we asked this question.
Yeah. And we've all got to pick up the pieces as best we can and work out how we fit and apply our past into it. So training is a big part of it, and something that I saw a lot of our clients struggle with. So I kind of started the discussions at Jacobs around us building our own training program. So that was the start of the Jacobs 3-day IAM certificate program. So with the consulting team, we built up that program, and then we kind of piloted it in Canada, rolled it out across North America, and it actually is still running globally to this day. So it's been pretty cool to kind of have a stamp on that and get that rolling for Jacobs, and still seeing that rolling now. But so did that for a number of years, and that kind of really ignited this thing inside me around training and capacity building, and how we have this huge problem in North America, globally as well, but particularly in North America right now, around the state of infrastructure and where we're at with asset management practice. And we need to massively escalate our training and awareness building efforts across the continent. And that was why basically I started up icInfrastructure. Was I wanted to lean more into that space around helping infrastructure owners do more themselves, building awareness, building the expertise that they need to build out and follow their roadmaps, implement their asset management systems. And started up icInfrastructure 5 years ago now. Been involved in lots of kind of small and lots of major awareness building and training programs around North America. And that's a big passion for us, is on this kind of capacity building side and knowledge building side, because we've got a huge staffing problem, huge knowledge gap around the continent, and it's a big challenge for so many infrastructure organizations. So that's our path now, is how can we help bring more people into this fold and get more organizations building more internal capacity around asset management.
Well, I think to go straight to your work with the Michigan Infrastructure Council is a perfect follow-up to that, because you're doing that in a really large way. Can you tell us about your work with the Michigan Infrastructure Council?
For sure. Yeah, that's been a really exciting project, and exciting to see kind of Michigan really kind of step up and say, hey, like, we do have this infrastructure problem. We need to make steps moving forward, and asset management is a major way to help us better understand where we're at when it comes to our infrastructure challenge, and how do we start getting out of it. So, that's been a relationship that's started back in 2019. Initially met them at one of the CNAM conferences, the Canadian Network of Asset Managers, and we started having conversations with them around how we can help build asset management awareness around Michigan. So super interesting kind of program that's supported by the state of Michigan, so the kind of state level government there, but really driven by infrastructure owners. The Michigan Infrastructure Council is a really interesting group of infrastructure owners around the state that have got together and said, hey, there's a better way of doing this, and we can help each other out and move forward with this. So they've done a lot of really cool things over the years around their infrastructure planning and asset management efforts across the state. Ryan has done a lot of great work around this project portal, which is around, how do we connect the capital planning efforts around different communities with other communities, so that we can do some consolidation and kind of, tear up the roads once, instead of, going back and having to redo things. So when we're doing a water main over here, and in 3 years' time, we've got to resurface the road, why not let's talk together and make those things happen. So that's one of the big things that Michigan have put in place, which is great. The two bits that we've been involved in is getting in place this asset management readiness scale. So that is a tool that is free to download. It's actually based on the Canadian Asset Management Readiness Scale. And it's a very basic gap assessment tool, specifically that, it's been Americanized. We took a lot the Canadian tool and then and adapted it for what was appropriate down there. But it's a really good way at those communities and infrastructure owners understanding where are we at now, and that's something that we talk a lot in our training about, is that this asset management journey can feel pretty overwhelming when you first start getting your head around it. And guaranteed there is going to be things happening in your organization that you don't know about. There's bits of the puzzle that you already have. So that gap assessment to understand, okay, like what do we have right now is such an important step. Sure, there'll be gaps, and you can start thinking about, right, how do we want to start filling those, and what does our future state look like, our short, medium, and long-term goals for the next while. But that's an important thing, is that gap assessment. So that's been a really useful tool that's been used by hundreds of communities and infrastructure owners around the state of Michigan to help them understand, okay, where are we at now and where do we want to go? And then the third kind of pillar of what they've been doing over the last couple of years is this champion program. So super exciting way to try and build awareness, create knowledge, and establish this network of asset management champions at scale across the state. So that's been a really exciting program for them to try and, okay, give people that awareness. So getting that light bulb to come on around, okay, like why is asset management important? What is it about? Like what are those messages, and how do we get people bought into this? The second part around that knowledge piece. So what knowledge do we need to give these infrastructure owners to help them better understand the bits of the puzzle that are involved? This asset management readiness scale, it's not just about data. It's not just about policy. It's not just about systems. Like these things all have to work together. And that asset management readiness scale, like there's different parts of it that are a bit hard to get your head around. So that program, the champion program, is trying to help build that knowledge amongst all these infrastructure owners off those different parts of the puzzle that they want to pull together. And then that third part around building that network has been so cool to see. We're getting all these different infrastructure owners in a room together, building relationships and connections between them so they can start to help each other out. We have what we call these learning pods. So yes, we have kind of e-learning that people go through, but then we get together. We actually just had one this morning for the latest class, where we get a group of the learners together and we start talking about some of the things that they've been learning, some of the theory that we've been teaching them, and then getting them to actually talk about it within the context of their organization. And we break people into these smaller groups of 3, 4, 5 infrastructure owners, and they start having conversations around like what is happening within their organization. And that's been so amazingly powerful because they're hearing these challenges and these opportunities are happening in other organizations, and they're able to really reflect on what it means for us, at the same time like making these relationships and people they can pick up the phone to that says, hey, like remember last month you told us about this, like can you tell me a bit more about how we could do that in our organization? And they're so willing to help each other out, which is amazing. The conversations we were having this morning with that group were around steering committees and the power of bringing a group, this cross-departmental group from your organization together to start having these conversations around, okay, where are we at right now as an organization? Where do we want to go? What are the priorities? What are the different challenges around the organization? And having these individuals talk about where they're at with their steering committee efforts. And yeah, there was a few groups that had one, and they were able to share with the others, hey, like this is what we did, this is the steps we went through, these are the benefits that we're seeing. And then there's others that are like, oh, we're just on the start of this journey, how do we start to make some actions around this and implement this within our organization? So yeah, some really exciting conversations happening with that, and it's been phenomenal to see that program continue to evolve. So we're now on our third class of champions. So there's over 200 people now that have been through that program across the state of Michigan. And yeah, they're literally kind of full coverage across the state, which is super exciting to see. And the intent is for that to continue to grow and further build that network of practitioners around the state. One of the big benefits that they're seeing is that we now have this common language. You know, we're able to have these conversations between different organizations with this collective understanding. You know, we're all using the same terms. We all have that same view of the big picture, which has been super exciting to see as this network starts to gather pace.
So that's a lot to unpack, but I'm glad you got it all out with that passion. So just to rewind a little bit, I jumped over this.
Oh yeah.
This is the guidebook that Asset Management 101 that Iain was the lead author on for the Canadian Asset Management, Canadian Network of Asset Managers. And then basically what's happened in Michigan had a problem, Flint, Michigan. And they understood how bad their problem was. And the treasurer of Michigan is where this started. They did not want to be liable for the problems. So the Department of Treasury in Michigan set up the Michigan Asset Management Council. And Iain mentioned Ryan LaRue is the executive director, and one of the programs is the Dig Once program. And what that does is have an electronic map of Michigan, and you say, I'm going to be working on this road doing this. And if somebody else is doing something, needs to do something on that road, then ding, and they get introduced to each other and they can start coordinating. Very simple concept using contemporary tools. And then of course, training is an important part of it. And so glad to know they understood that. And the first training program was about 80 people last year. The spring was another 80. And there was so much demand in the spring that they launched this fall program also. So, you know, just a great success that we want to see replicated throughout all 49 other states and 6 territories and the rest of the world, because it is a network approach. So the Asset Leadership Network totally endorses it.
Yeah, and I think it's, I just put a few links in the chat there for people. So I put a link to the CNAM AM 101 booklet. Delighted to see that's on your desk. That was a really exciting thing that CNAM did a few years ago. Printed a load of copies of that. CNAM actually posted that booklet to 5,000 elected officials across Canada to try and get that awareness at a kind of higher level of asset management, which was super exciting. And then I've also put links to the Michigan Asset Management Readiness Scale. So that's that free Excel tool that you guys can all download and use. And then also a link to the Champions program for anyone else that's interested in more information there. Sorry, when you go.
We'll use those in the newsletter and put that on the website for sure. So go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that, you know, the Champion platform, the program that we've built, I got a few of the kind of snapshots up here that I can share, and you can see what it looks like in practice here. Let me head over here. Is that coming through okay?
Yes, it is.
Nice. So this is what the kind of landing page for the program looks like. You can see here that it's very much branded as a Michigan MIC program. And that's a really important thing for us, is that, you know, we want to have the max kind of buy-in and cultural fit with these training programs that we're doing. So having them look and feel like they're their program and our client's program is super important. So this is the MIC landing page here for the Champions. There is the kind of upfront, the kind of standard kind of e-learning things that you would expect to see in terms of navigation panes and progress. But here's the 4 parts of that program that I talked about. So there's an e-learning component as part of that online training. We have these learning pods that's where we're kind of taking these e-learning messages and the theory that they're learning and talking about them in these live groups with other champions. That's helping drive these network connections and helping build the relationships across the state, which again is a huge objective for the program. And then another part is this industry learning. So there's lots that people can learn from others, you know, lots of case studies that are out there, lots of stories that are out there. And that's been in a great partnership with the Canadian Network of Asset Managers. Was they were able to produce and share their webinars that they've developed and conference presentations over the years, they were all made available for the champions to access. And over time, what's been happening is Michigan are developing their own stories. There's more and more case studies and stories that are developing in Michigan that we are using and stitching back into the program. So we're updating the content continually in the back end of the program and updating it with more Michigan stories so people can hear more from their peers around what's going on. When you actually start getting into the learning experience here, specifically on the e-learning, this is one of the modules around planning and decision making, and this aligns with that planning and decision making part of that asset management readiness scale. So again, people are coming through the program are building up this full understanding of what they need to know for completing that part of the readiness scale. What does best practice look like in all these different areas? So kind of jumping into here, we've got our kind of standard video content that we get into, and this is kind of standard stuff in terms of some theory, some messaging, some slides. There's a talking head in the corner. I don't have my eyes shut for most of it. It's just the way I paused that video. And then kind of like e-learning side of things, there's lots of exercises throughout here. There's various downloads and surveys that we ask and kind of getting people to engage. So that's all part of having an effective adult learning experience. So that's a really important thing for us, and something that we've been learning a lot about over the last few years is, how do you really drive a lot of that competency building? And then we also have actual stories from Michigan. So as I mentioned, we're building up more and more stories around what's been happening in Michigan, and that gets injected back into the program for others to learn to. So that's been a really exciting part of that there. So yeah, it's been a really exciting program, and we're super excited to see it continue to expand and evolve. And yeah, it's something that we're super keen to transplant into other states, other regions, as well as kind of customize for different problems. So this is something that, yeah, we've got a lot of off-the-shelf content that we can use and leverage, but we do recognize that different places have their own particular challenges, their own kind of nuances, or their own areas that they're focusing on, and we can customize our platform and pull in whatever information that we need to help leverage and support some of the programs that you've got going in. So yeah, no matter what it is that you're trying to build awareness or evolve capacity and competency on, we're yeah, super interested in this space and helping people out in it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that you have the engine, and that other states can put the chassis on it that they would like to see, so that they can be driving their asset management journey. And the really good part is that networking and connecting with somebody from a town in your same county or province, and it's incredible how much comes from just connecting with the right people. And so the Asset Leadership Network would like to help you connect with the treasury departments in these other states. Anybody who's observing this, there's a desire to reach out to the other states. Yes, so I really like your Michigan Infrastructure Council client, and it allows your passion to come out, because you're not just doing this for your work. It's your work, and you're raising a family and all that, but you see the value of improved asset management and helping the planet for your child. So that's what I think is your real driver.
And I think that's kind of been an evolution for me in my career, and what I want to be focusing on, over the last kind of 5-10 years is, yeah, we do a little bit of consulting work here and there with specific infrastructure owners, but when I look at the problems that we've got across North America in terms of our, the state of our infrastructure, particularly on a kind of public infrastructure front, what's happening at a kind of local government level, we've got a huge problem. And, the only way for us to really have a massive impact on that is to train people like this at scale. So that's kind of where we're leaning more and more into that capacity building and training front, because it's such a big problem that we're seeing across the place. And for us to make the biggest difference, on the future, and for us to be having long sustainable services going, not just next year or 5 years, but for the next generations, like we need more people talking about this. We have to have a much bigger contingent of people that understand asset management. They're talking to organizations about it, and yeah, that's kind of why we're leaning more and more into this space, because whether or not we call it asset management, and I don't know if you want to go into that rabbit hole now or not, this is here to stay, right? Like this problem that we've got around our infrastructure, the way we make decisions, the way we plan around this, like this is going to be here. And, we have to get on top of this. We don't have a choice. So, everyone that's in this space already, you guys have got careers for life. And it's certainly something that, as we look at what's happening, like, how do we get more people into this space? How do we start attracting new generations, looking at courses at universities and getting like people interested in this? Because when I graduated, like I had no idea that this was an option. How do we better connect with those really talented kids that are coming out and pull them into this industry? Because we need more people. How do we make that become a more obvious path for people?
So so glad that you're saying those. We're starting the ALN Higher Education Asset Leadership Board. Nick has put up the ALN Higher Asset Leadership Board. No, that's not it. It's the Higher Education Asset Leadership Board. But we do want to be on a higher plane, and all the training that you have ready to go and to be customized for future governments is very good. And actually, I would like Nick to come on and explain a little bit about this campus, because the campus website is another place that people can distribute their information about what they've learned. And yeah, we want to light the fire just like you do. And so, Nick, can you tell us about the campus website?
Yeah, a project the ALN is working with the US TAG Mirror Committee to develop a place for people to post information about their organization and where they're at in their journey, as kind of a way, a community gathering place, a place to collect data and information. And we've got exciting new aspects to the website planned coming, but just promoting that aspect of promoting the culture through telling success stories, and not just success stories, but true stories from around the country mostly, but hopefully around the world, of where people are at in this important journey to, again, just improve adoption around.
So Ian, there's so much more we can talk about. So we're going to have to schedule in on something. We've got a policy month coming up for the month of December. Yeah, and maybe you can be on a panel, because I know you do some policy
education. Yeah, really keen. The policy stuff, super important, and a great kind of tipping point around organizations getting that awareness and direction on where they want to go. So yeah, I'd love to be part of a panel on that.
Okay, and then also perhaps we can get you to offer a web program that gives a sample of your training, so that people can get an idea of what it's like, and record that and have that available.
Yeah, no, happy.
Looking so much to bottling your energy, because you certainly have quite a bit, and that's what we need.
So yeah, what's there's a few different rabbit holes we can go down from here. What would you like to explore? I know kind of time is limited, so what do you think is most interesting to get into?
Well, we're keeping it to 30 minutes. Maybe let's go into overtime today, Nick. Go ahead and end the program.
Sure, yeah. Just want to make sure we thank our patron members and other organizational members, because they make the program possible. So don't want to forget that. And we do want to have another plug for the upcoming ALN A55K professional certification course starting next week. So reach out soon if you're interested.
So welcome to overtime, everyone. And John Shellness, you do not have to stay. Just last week, John said, thank you for ending the programs at 30 minutes, because since we started this fall season, we've been very good at being 30 minutes, but I do not want to stop this flow of energy.
I forgot it was 30 minutes. So if you want to cap it, I'm good.
Oh, no, we just did. That was it. That, you know, for the recorded version, boom, that was the end. And let's see if John has gone. Yeah, I think, yeah. So this is just us. We're just talking now. This is just too
All
exciting.
good. All good. And I know there's some people in the crew. So if anyone's got any questions, happy to answer questions from the audience too.
Okay, so John says he's free to hang out today, so he's going to stick around, and he's always good with questions. So John, if you've got any questions, go ahead and send them. So you mentioned other clients, but you know, do you have something specific about another client that you can offer?
So I think one of the things that we've been doing recently is more kind of tailored training for specific organizations. So yeah, we've got that kind of big state level program, and that's kind of building general awareness. But when you get into specific organizations, that's been a really interesting place that we've gotten into in more detail. So one of the clients that we've got right now, and we actually did a couple of conference presentations with them recently, including at the IAM a couple of weeks ago, was the town of Oakville in Ontario. So, you know, they're a big advocate around building capacity and helping educate their staff around the organization. And they see that as being a big way towards driving that culture change. So, you know, having that, you know, equipping people with the awareness and understanding goes a long way towards creating that cultural shift around this. So what we've been doing with them is, you know, we took the competency framework work that we were doing with the Canadian Network of Asset Managers and used that to basically apply to their organization and say, okay, like, where do we need the different areas of competency and at what level? Because when you get into that staffing level, it's really interesting because, you know, what you need your facility manager to understand from an asset management perspective is different to what you need your financial analyst to understand from an asset management perspective. But collectively, we need the whole organization to understand, you know, certain parts of it. So, you know, helping them through that process of starting to be a bit more strategic around our resources and what areas of competency we need, but then using that to say, okay, what training do we need to give those people? Now, you know, you don't need to send, or you don't want to send all your staff on like advanced asset management courses. Like that's not, you know, not necessary, but you do need your staff to have these different levels of understanding. So what we've been doing with Oakville is taking our off the shelf content, using that as the kind of theory piece around, yeah, sure, I understand the difference between, you know, planned and, you know, reactive maintenance, or, you know, here's the importance of the work management system. But actually using that and applying that to them. So it's like, here's the theory and here's why it matters to us at the town of Oakville. So capturing staff interviews, the way they do it at Oakville, and building that into these learning programs that are then getting deployed and spread out across the different staff. Because again, you know, different staff need a different level of understanding. So helping them, you know, build that capacity at that staff level, not just that kind of like basic awareness level, but really getting into, okay, like what do we need around the organization to drive that? So that's been another super exciting project for us that we've been yeah, really passionate about jumping into.
Excellent. One of the things we've been talking about just yesterday at an ALN board meeting is the need for people to understand value from assets. It's not about the assets. It's
that is, we
value.
spend probably a good half hour maybe in our course talking about this, you know, like what does value mean for us? And I think that's a super important thing that often infrastructure owners gloss over. You know, we jump straight to the, wait a minute, this asset is in bad condition and we need to fix it.
Right.
Well, do you? Like, is that asset actually that important to the value that your stakeholders need? Maybe fixing that asset isn't the best thing for you to do. You know, maybe you're, you know, the way your demand's changing and your services are changing. Actually, you want to be investing in something else or a different asset somewhere else. It's yeah, the value side of things is, and you know, that's something that I've seen evolve in the industry. Like, is that shift to, you know, not being asset focused and being much more value focused. And I'm super excited for the next 10 years because I think we're just going to get further into that focus.
Good. Yeah, and it's really necessary. Back in the late 70s in architecture school, an architecture professor said the most radical thing an architect could do is not build a building. And Kimono Numa, whose company is a patron member, said an architect might see what is there and show you how to use your existing spaces in a way that precludes you from needing a new building. You got to focus on what the real mission is, then you can see what the problems are. And I've got the reason why we're doing this policy month is asset leadership is establishing a policy that drives a culture of asset management. And so we're doing two things before we even get to the asset management: policy and culture. And that's what leaders need to do. And what do your policy courses or course talk about?
Yeah, the policy side is really interesting, and I saw that point from Carmen in the chat there around like educating the elected officials. And this is something that we do with a lot of our clients when we're doing that policy work, is that, you know, just throwing the policy up to council to be signed off, it's a massive missed opportunity. Like the policy itself, like the bit of paper, like, so what? Like the conversations that you have in developing your policy and getting people bought into the principles, that is the gold. Like that is the absolute like nugget of starting that cultural shift and building that awareness in the organization. And something that we do with all councils and elected officials, and we actually just did one of these on Monday, was training for elected officials. So, you know, a 90-minute, 2-hour session with elected officials and mayors to be like, hey, this is asset management. You know, this is the importance around.
You have got to send that to me. We've got to put that in the newsletter. That is what we need to start telling people what elected officials are doing and needs to be done. So, yeah, excellent.
Then the important thing is, so like, you know, yeah, we did that awareness training, and then what's going to happen in, you know, a couple of months' time, the policy is going to come up. So it's like, hey, council, you know, remember that training that we did? Here's our policy. Here's what we want to do in our community around our asset management practices. And these are the principles that we want to follow. And we want your endorsement on that. And you heard about why this is so important. Give us this stamp, give us this buy-in. And by the way, here's the roadmap for how we're going to implement this over the next few years. It may require some additional resources that need your support. You know, get behind this and support us with this journey. So yeah, that's an important part there. You know, just, you know, coming back to that point with Carmen, is like, yeah, using that policy and training combination as a way to really swing your elected officials on side with what you're trying to do is yeah, super useful.
Excellent.
Nice.
Well,
thanks for the comment, Jack. Appreciate that. And David, thanks.
And just like when we were together in person, I wanted to keep talking forever. We could do this for a full hour, but let's let everybody get on with their other things. Let's see what Carmen says first. Capacity to analyze outcomes. Don't have the analysts. Well, sometimes that can be addressed with dashboards tied to what measurements are established ahead of time that you want to achieve. And when those dashboards don't show you going up where you are, that's kind of real-time analysis. But you're talking about more detailed analysis of actual assets, I'm sure. But anyway, we need to get Carmen on and have a conversation about what her needs are. So, so thank you, Iain. It's been very good talking and appreciate all the energy you bring to the industry. Thank you for becoming a member, and we'll highlight you as much as we possibly can.
Nice. Thanks very much. Really appreciate what you guys are doing, and great to get together and have this chat with everyone. So thanks for the time, and yeah, looking forward to Policy Month coming up.
Okay. And thanks to all of our attendees, especially those who stuck around to the end. Really appreciate your support. Bye for now.